You're listening to ESOPOD, the Folience ESOP podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to ESOPOD. My name is Sean Hoy, and today I'm joined by Tracy McCormick. She is on the Folience Board of Directors and is the board chair. Tracy, how you doing?
I'm great, Sean. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on. So for people who don't know you, could you give a little background, who you are, where you came from?
Yeah. I grew up in Iowa City, where my dad's family landed in the 30s. I went to the University of Michigan for college and then to the London School of Economics to get my master's degree in economics. And following that, I joined JP Morgan and spent the next almost 20 years with them in New York, Chicago, and LA in our investment banking and merger and acquisition groups, primarily focused on media and entertainment companies. That was kind of the New York, LA bookends, and Chicago was more general industrial companies. And then I left Morgan after 19 years to join as CFO of a company that my husband and I started a number of years ago. And the company is focused on urban planning and real estate development, primarily in Pasadena, where I now live. And we just finished our third, fourth, and fifth multifamily projects. So those are complete, and we're now running them as property managers and kind of a full-time deal. And in spite of working with my husband, we're still happily married, at least on most days. And I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids.
Awesome. So how did you get involved in Folience, and what interested you in joining the board?
Well, so I was introduced to Folience 10 years ago now, in 2016, by the former CEO of Midwest One Bank, based in Iowa City. And I'm on the board of that company also. And the then CEO was rolling off the Folience board, and he threw my name in the hat as a potential replacement for him. And so I met the then CEO and chair of Folience and was so intrigued and impressed. I mean, my knowledge of ESOPs back then was superficial at best, but over the past 10 years, I've become a true believer. I think, I remember Todd Bransky saying to me after we won the ESOP of the Year award, saying, you know, when he joined in 1998, he didn't know anything about ESOPs, and now he can't imagine working for a company that isn't an ESOP. And I sort of feel the same way. This notion of shared success is so powerful that an individual, through his or her daily efforts, can help this company create value and create meaningful wealth for themselves and for their coworkers. I think it's very special. I also think while management and the board and everyone, all employees have to work at culture, definitionally ESOP companies kind of are collaborative, are innovative, there's something very special about that, you know, the construct of ESOPs sets up. So that's intriguing. That continues to be impressive to me. And then I think it feels very purposeful to me, because the success of this company matters to the people who show up to work every day and help build it.
Yeah, definitely. So for people who don't know what a board is or what a board does, could you give just what do you do for Folience?
It's such a good question, because I sometimes think not even boards and management fully understands, you know, the roles, but it's our job, the board's job, to help the company succeed in the long term. We don't run the business day to day. That's management's responsibility. But we guide and challenge and support management as they execute our strategic plan. And so as a board, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to make the company stronger in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And it's through that long-term lens that we focus on things like growth, whether it's organic growth through our existing businesses or acquisitions, focus on financial strength and stability, focus on risk. And that's a broad category, but risk in general, focus on culture and talent development and the leadership and succession planning. So those are the big buckets we focus on through that long-term lens.
And if I remember correctly, so the CEO of Folience reports to the board directly.
That's correct. That is correct. And it's interesting because Tom was chair of the board before he took on the CEO role. So that's a unique dynamic that has changed. But yes, one of our biggest jobs is finding and keeping and managing the CEO. So yes, that is important. And yes, he does report to us.
So it sounds like you have a lot of interactions with leadership at Folience. What does a typical board meeting look like, and what's discussed there?
We meet 4 times a year. I'll get to the mechanics of the meeting, but I'll set the stage. We meet 4 times a year, 3 times in person, and 1 time remotely, and then additional meetings as needed. So it's not fixed. If something big comes up, we'll all get on the phone together. We've tried, and I think it's been so valuable to have meetings in different locations. So not just come to Cedar Rapids to headquarters, but to go to our business operations in Sumner, in Chickasha, and in Manhattan. And we've also been to our directors' hometowns. So we've been to Kansas City and we've been to Des Moines to see what our directors do and how their work impacts their help with us. And we've yet to come to Pasadena because Kelly O'Hara has nixed that as being too expensive. But I am hopeful that before my time on the board finishes, that everyone will get to come out here, and probably happen in the fall, maybe around an Iowa football game at the Rose Bowl or something like that. And I have to say, the visits to the business units are highlights for the directors. It's funny, Tom struggles to get us off the plant floors because we're busy talking to people and seeing what everyone's doing. And it's so great to meet people and hear their stories and really see the ESOP principles at work, that there's a palpable sense of pride in the people who are doing the work and the work being done. So those are favorite meetings. The meeting itself, the board and sometimes the business unit leaders meet the night before for dinner, and that's also been kind of a long-standing tradition, which is an excellent one. It helped us get to know each other, and so we're a very collaborative group. It doesn't mean we always agree with each other, but it sets the stage for respectful disagreement. It's not uncomfortable if we say something different or challenge or whatever. So, and I think a lot of that is due to spending time in less formal settings. And it also sets the stage if you have to talk about pressing issues. You're able to do that in a less formal setting at dinner the night before the meeting. And then the meetings themselves last about 5 to 6 hours, and we do the normal board meeting stuff like approve minutes and hear from the committee chairs. They report in. But the most valuable part of the meeting is we hear from Tom, the CEO, and Ben and Randy with very in-depth reports from the business unit. Because it's important for us, if we're helping guide strategy for this coming long term, that we understand the businesses. So that's a big part of it. And then the other big part is a financial review. And so we do a deep dive on business unit performance and overall performance and the future and what that looks like and whether or not we're in compliance with our bank covenants. And so we spend a significant amount of time on that. And then we save time at the end for executive sessions with independent leaders and so on. So that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay.
Sometimes we have guest speakers come in, so we get to meet the next level, below Randy and Ben, and get to meet people on Kelly's team, and so. But yeah, that's kind of the gist. And I will say it's changed a lot. I mean, 10 years ago we were a very different company, and so as you can imagine, the agendas have changed as the company's priorities and outlook has changed.
So I know there's different roles within the board, and you are the chair. What is the role of a chair, and what are some other roles that exist, and what do they do?
So the role typically of a chair is to facilitate discussions between the CEO and the rest of the board. We are such a small board, and we're down one member, that I hate to say that my job isn't necessary, but it's not as important right now because, again, we're small and we're collaborative. We know Tom well from our time on the board together, and so it's a slightly different beast. But again, facilitation, one-offs with other directors to say, are we covering everything that you want to see covered at the board meeting? Is the agenda appropriate? Are we spending enough time on strategic issues as opposed to check the box issues? And so dialogue like that. Our other roles are we have two board committees, an audit committee and a compensation committee. And those are chaired by Bill and Wendy respectively, and who are both independent directors, and they're populated by independent directors so that there's no potential for conflicts of interest and any other issues that arise. It's governance very much aligned with best practice public company governance. So those are the basic roles. We handle sort of risk discussions and nomination and governance discussions collectively as a board.
Gotcha. Okay. So you talked before about being on the production floor and seeing like that palpable ESOP difference. Does the fact that Folience is an ESOP, does that change how you work on the board, or how does that influence your decisions?
It's interesting because I, as I said, I also serve on a publicly traded company that is in a highly regulated interest. So I serve on that board. And so that requires vigilance. But I think there is something extra about serving on an ESOP-owned company board because the connection is so direct. We're not representing kind of an intangible, abstract group of shareholders. The shareholders are our employees, and the decisions you make really matter to their long-term outcomes. And so I think it's an added level of responsibility when we make decisions. I think it sharpens our focus on stewardship and sustainability and culture and value creation. And so I do think it makes a difference. And I think because of that, this board a long time ago, I can't take any credit for it, but this board and management has always adopted both, I would say, publicly traded company best practices and ESOP company best practices. So we have independent directors, a majority of independent directors. We have board level committees that, as I said, are chaired and populated by independent directors. We have a top 5 auditing firm, Forbes Mazars. We have an independent ESOP trustee who's considered to be one of the best in the business. So those kind of governance principles, we feel very strongly about maintaining because we're an ESOP company.
Kind of getting the best of both worlds almost.
Yeah. And I think because the connection is so direct, as I said, it's really important to have those.
You mentioned long-term success and planning. I know specifically Folience is interested in acquisitions long-term. Is the board involved in any acquisition, like planning or approval?
Very much. I mean, this is a great example of the difference between what a board does and what management does. So when it comes to acquisitions, I would say they're typically sourced candidates for acquisition. Well, let me back up. Say the board and management together describe the industries and potential candidates within those industries that we could be interested in. So you try and define the pool of candidates. Sometimes stuff comes out of the blue, and you don't want to not be opportunistic if it arises. So you define the industries. Management tends to source the acquisitions. So Ben, whose knowledge of the trailer business is so exceptional, it would be weird for me to say, this is a great idea in the trailer business. I think that's Ben's world, and he would be able to come up with those candidates. So management tends to source acquisitions. When we have an opportunity, management tends to do the heavy lifting on analyzing the acquisition. They'll do the detailed financial forecasts. They'll negotiate the contracts. But the board will ask the really tough questions. They'll challenge assumptions. They will dive deep into the financial impact of the acquisition and what it looks like and the opportunity cost of doing it. Should we be allocating our capital to something else as opposed to this? And so there's very robust dialogue on when we have an actual candidate, and then we get to a position where we all vote on it. So I would say, the board is very involved, but the roles are different.
Gotcha. So were you involved with the current board that was influential in like the Cimarron and Lifeline acquisitions?
Yes, we were. At the time we looked at Lifeline, we had sold KCRT, had just the newspaper and a portfolio of investments. And so that was our first foray into manufacturing. And so our then CEO, Daniel Goldstein, did a great job of keeping the board informed, of educating the board. And I think we did a good job what that would look like financially and whether it was worth taking the leap. And same for Cimarron. They were both really productive exercises. And on the flip side of that is also the sale of the Gazette. So if we look at our portfolio of companies, we're buying, probably not selling anything else, but that was also a process the board was very involved in.
So when I think of board of directors, the first thing that pops into my head is a skyscraper with a bunch of people in a conference room wearing suits.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there anything that you think people often misunderstand about boards in general or what they look like?
I mean, you're so right, Sean, that, you think about some very serious people dressed in the nines, top floor of the skyscraper, and we're not like that at all. I mean, it helps to be part of a small group. As I said, we're a very congenial group. We all like each other very much. There's ample room for humor and to lighten the load, not to take away from the seriousness of the job we're doing. But I go back to on the misperception or misconception, I go back to just the definition of the roles. Because as I said, I sometimes think even directors and management teams have a hard time getting their arms around it. I think it's because, the reality is it's not like a clean, fixed line. It requires judgment on the part of both sides. It depends on the situation, and I think it's something that both sides, and they make it sound like they're opposite because we're really a cohesive group, but it's something that we all work on very hard, and because we've trust each other and we've developed mutual respect and there's good communication, I think it works well. I mean, and the board isn't a rubber stamp for management. It's not a compliance checklist thing. The board is very engaged in everything the company does. We just don't run it day to day. So again, I think that's kind of, to me, that's the biggest misperception about what boards look like. We're not standing there telling Tom what to do. It's a very collaborative discussion with a lot of give and take. And, if there's good discussion, then the group can make much better decisions for the company.
You mentioned that the Folience Board is currently down a member.
Yes.
Is the board involved in sourcing other board members, or what does that process look like?
Similar to acquisitions, I would say that because Tom is in the business and in the community, he's probably our most valuable resource for future candidates. But the board, together with management, we've developed a skill matrix, and we see what our current board members have and contribute. And we think about the company, not just now, but in the future and what we might need, 5 years from now, and try and find a candidate that has some of those skills. And, because in the ESOP community is tight, and Wendy serves on the national board of the ESOP. Bill has presented, these are my fellow directors, Bill has presented at ESOP conferences, and so there's an opportunity to meet people and source candidates. I think our desire would be to have someone who knows one of our communities, is in our geographic footprint, yeah, we're involved. Again, it's a very collaborative effort.
So I'm a little biased. I'm in IT, and so I deal with technology a lot. I'm curious, what is the role of technology from your perspective going forward, and like AI, and there's a bunch of buzzwords I could say, but just kind of overall, what do you think?
It is, what would I say, fascinating, because I think and you are miles ahead of me, so I'd love to hear what you think, but I just think that the capacity right now, or the acceleration in technology, is outrunning the capacity, certain of board members, to be experts in it. Probably not for people like you, who live and breathe in that space. And so when you think about the needs of the company, do you as a board try and find an IT expert to sit on the board? And I don't know how I feel about that, because I sort of feel like we need to have broader skill sets and bring in the experts like you to help advise us and guide us, because it is fascinating. I use AI now in a very small way, just in our business, and it's both powerful and exciting because it makes me so much more productive, but it's also a little bit scary, AI in particular. And I use ChatGPT mostly, and I'm trying to get to know the other services. But it's a little bit sycophantic. So we develop a model together. It's like, that's really good thinking, Tracy. You've really thought this through. And it's like, oh, I've done such a good job. And you got to be careful with that kind of feedback loop, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they definitely like to agree with you and keep the conversation going. And how can they help
yeah.
you? Yeah,
But
at least
how
from
it's
my
going to be now?
perspective, I just briefly, I think it's like a tool. AI is ultimately a tool, and it's a very important tool. Just like the computer in general, it was a very important tool that changed work for a lot of people. I think AI will be somewhat similar, maybe
Yeah.
at a different scale than computers even.
How is it changing your job? I mean, you think about just the potential for, just the issues around cybersecurity. I mean, you're reading about Anthropic's new whatever you call it, new thing that is supposedly like the world's greatest hacker. I mean, how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of scary, and it's cool to see what it's capable of. Even for just idea generation of what's possible. Like Claude
Mm-hmm.
from Anthropic
Mm-hmm.
is very good at making code or even
Yeah.
making websites. Like it can just show you a website that it could make. Um, but that doesn't mean that someone else couldn't say, hey, how can I break into this website? Or like they could
Yeah.
very easily flip that around. So yeah, it's just another attack source essentially, but
Yeah.
very you would be I think it'd be kind of silly not to understand that it's a big deal and that you should look into it.
Yep, I agree with that. I think all of us should be exploring you on a more professional level, me just to understand and see how it can be deployed. I mean, we're thinking on the other board I'm on, which is a bank, you think about some of the back office stuff. So call centers, right, are huge opportunities to reduce costs and make the people there much more productive. And we haven't started thinking about how it can generate revenue for us, but it's coming, right? And you think about it, JP Morgan, they spend billions on technology. I mean, they're effectively, besides being a really good banker, they're effectively a tech company, right? They hire experts, they build their own systems, they code their own. It's pretty. Yeah, so if you don't pay attention to it, I think you could be in trouble.
Yeah. All right. Tangent over. Sorry.
No, I love those tangents.
You talked a while ago about the board really liking going on site and talking to employee owners on the shop floor or wherever they happen to be. Um, I'm curious if you could give some advice or one piece of advice to any employee owner at Folience, what would that be?
Yeah, I feel like you guys live the advice I would give, which is to really embrace the concept of ownership. It it's real, right? And while sometimes it might feel a long way out in the future, it's real, and that by showing up every day and doing your job well and supporting your teammates and thinking of new ways to do your job better, that creates value over time, and that adds up for you and the company. And so from what I've seen, and as I said, I think we all have to work on culture. It's not, check the box and get it done. But I think from what I've seen, the embrace of that culture is very powerful.
I think I heard at a ESOP conference that culture cannot be a policy. Like you can't just say this is the culture
Yeah,
now. It has to be
exactly.
acted out every day.
Yeah, living, breathing. Yeah, exactly. By all of you guys who are on the ESOP committees and who are doing podcasts and sharing the benefits of it. Because if you're a 22-year-old kid coming to your job for the first time, it's like, yeah, whatever. But if you can convince them to have a slightly longer term view. It's an incredible tool.
So thinking long term, kind of as we close up here, how do you feel from the board perspective? How do you feel about the future of Folience, and how should employees feel about the future of Folience?
Well, we can't be complacent, and we have to keep learning and, understanding the market. We've got a lot going on in the world that's going to impact our business. And so we have to focus on, controlling the things we can control. But I remain incredibly optimistic about our future and confident. And mostly it's because of the people who work for the company. Again, as I said, from what I've seen, the power of everyone showing up and being dedicated and committed and working to increase the value, that makes me incredibly confident. And then when you add our people to a foundation of excellent leadership, strong financial base, thoughtful governance, you've got an infrastructure that will survive into the future and again makes us resilient in the face of challenges and can sustain us long into the future.
Yeah, that's the dream. Like I want it to do well all the way till I'm ready to retire, and then on to the next generation, really. So yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Tracy, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for joining me today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Sean. It's really nice to be here, and thank you for all you do in helping to educate our employees about this great company.
Thanks for listening to ESOPOD. If you want to get in touch, send me an email at esopod@folience.com.